Technician's channel, and today on Tech Tip Tuesday I've decided we're going to go over drum brakes. They are phasing out, but lower end models from manufacturers still use drum brakes in the rear. So they're still there, just not as common as in the past. I'm going to disassemble the ones on my Camaro, or not disassemble them, but I'm going to take the drum off so you can see the components. I'll describe them to you, tell you what they do, and kind of tell you how it all operates. I'm not going to take it apart and put it back together or anything like that. I'm going to save that for a separate video. Today's just going to be going over the different types of drum brakes and stuff like that. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to my wife Isabella for supporting me since day one of starting this YouTube channel. She's always been there for me, always supported me, and I love you so much for that. She surprised me today. A little backstory. My grandparents were here a few weeks ago visiting after my son was born, and we went to the PX. And anybody not familiar with the military, the PX is basically their big store where you can buy stuff, and they also have little shops inside as well. Well, one of the shops did metalwork, and they had this American flag that was like torn. It was all metal and painted up, and it looked really cool, and I really wanted it, but it was $100. So I was like, nah. But besides that, I come home today and my wife surprised me and actually bought me one. So this is it. I think this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I think this is awesome. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much, my love. This is absolutely amazing. So we're gonna find somewhere in the garage to hang this. I don't know where yet, but I'm sure we'll find a good spot for it. But besides that, let me go ahead and get the vehicle jacked up and get the wheel off, and we will start going over the components of a drum brake. So I really hope you guys enjoy. If you do, make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you guys. Okay, YouTubers, so I have the wheel removed, and sometimes you will be able to just remove these. Sometimes they do get stuck, sometimes they're held on with pins or clips right here. So just check that, and if you can't get it off, give it a good tap. If that doesn't work, you still can't get it off, just get a big rubber mallet and just hit this thing around the edge, break it up, because there is a lot of dust particles and stuff in here, and it really tends to hold it together. So I'm going to go ahead and get the mallet, beat this thing off, and then we'll start looking at the components on the inside. Okay, YouTubers, so I have the drum off. This is what is actually considered the drum, the part that you actually see on the outside. This part is the backing plate, and then you have your brake shoes. You have a leading and a trailing brake shoe, or a primary and secondary. Now, if you're doing a drum brake job, you need to be very careful. Make sure that you're putting the brake pads on the right side, because they are usually different in thickness and in length. Now, you can't measure these the same way that you would measure a normal brake pad, because the thickness is not going to be anywhere close to what a normal disc brake pad is. So just keep that in mind. And then when you get a drum brake kit to redo this, you're going to get a lot of different springs and brackets and stuff like that. I'm going to kind of get into those and also post pictures up in here so you guys can get a better idea. Now, there are a few different styles. There was the twin leading, which we really don't use anymore. The two more commonly used ones is the duo servo and the leading trailing. And basically the only difference is how the primary shoe activates the secondary shoe and where the anchor pin is. So this is a duo servo because the anchor pin is at the top, and on the leading trailing you will have an anchor pin here. They both have a single piston here in the center, and they can be either located on the top or at the bottom. On the duo servo, it is on the top, and you have an adjusting wheel down here to equally space out your brake shoes, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. I'm going to bring you in. It is quite filthy in here, as you can tell, knocking the drum off. A lot of brake dust fell out. Another thing you want to do before working on this is spray everything down with brake cleaner, so you don't get that dust. You're not breathing that in, because it is actually really bad for you. So make sure to give it a nice coating of brake cleaner to keep that dust particle down. And now we will just get into some of the components and what they do. Alrighty guys, so I'm trying to keep this video pretty short but still give you some good information. When removing your drum, make sure that your e-brake is not set, otherwise these brake shoes will be pushed up against it and it will be very difficult to get it off. You probably actually won't get it off. And if you're still having troubles after hitting it with a hammer, you might have to access the back of the backing plate. There will be a slot in the back, usually towards the bottom center-ish area, where you access this star wheel. This is the star wheel right here, and it is for adjusting your brake shoes. So when you turn it one way, it takes your pads and moves them out against the drum. You move it the other way and it brings them in. Now that is for adjusting your brake shoes when installing your new brakes and drum and everything. And then it is also a self-adjuster a majority of the time. When you go in reverse and apply the brakes, then it will usually self-adjust, because when these brake pads wear, they get further away from your drum. So they need to be self-adjusted in order to keep contact, and so you still have brakes. So that is what that star wheel and floating mechanism is. And then you can see a bracket that comes off of it and kind of goes around to here, and it is anchored to the top. Well, that is connected to your e-brake cable. So when you pull the e-brake cable, it puts tension on this and pushes your shoes against the drum. Then you have hold down springs, and you can see that orange cap there, and there's another one over here, but it's just filthy. These are your hold down springs, and there's a pin that goes through the backing plate, and there's a spring under here, underneath that cap, and you put the pin in through the back, you put the spring on, and then you have this cap that you have to push down and rotate 90 degrees in order to lock it in, and that is what is actually holding your brake shoe to your backing plate. And it's like that for both shoes. Here's one as well. And then, speaking of your anchor, like this duo servo, the anchor is on top. So it uses the rotation of the drum in order to activate the secondary shoe. When you apply the brakes, the piston is going to push forward on this front shoe, the primary shoe, and it's going to wedge it into the drum. And when that happens, the force is going through the floating pin, or the star wheel adjuster. The force is going through that with the motion of the drum, and it's going to shove this brake shoe into the drum on this side. So that is considered self-energizing. And then you have basically all your return springs and specialty springs attached to your anchor. This one that goes from this e-brake lever to the anchor is considered a specialty spring, whereas these two are considered return springs. You have the primary and the secondary. One will be weaker than the other, and that is basically when you release your brake pedal, fluid is going to flow back to your reservoir, and these springs are what is going to pull these brake shoes back in and off of the drum brake, or the drum. So it's a pretty simple system, but the reason they got away from the drum brake system is because they do not dissipate heat as well. They do require less brake pressure for them to operate, but as you can tell, there are many more components that can fail in the drum brake system, and since they're not ventilated to the outside, you get the issue of all of this brake dust and everything. And if any fluid gets in here, whether you have a leaking cylinder here, or if you get condensation or anything inside your brake, then you get the brake dust mixed in with that, and it starts to create rust, or it starts to just pile up on everything inside of here, causing issues. And then if you have a leak from this cylinder, it's possible to get it on your brake shoes, which will cause less brake friction. So you might feel weak brakes. But for the e-brake, it is just a cable that runs in and attaches to this. I know it's really hard to see. There you can kind of see another return spring, and you can see the cable back there, and that just runs to this bracket. So the e-brake is cable operated while the rest of the brake is hydraulic off of this cylinder right here. So it's a pretty simple process, and whether you have the duo servo or the leading trailing, it's all basically the same. The springs might be located in different areas or something like that, but they're all gonna do the exact same thing. So when you're doing a drum brake job, just make sure to take plenty of pictures, or disassemble the other side, get the drum off, but don't disassemble the springs and shoes and everything. Use that as a reference while you work on this side of the vehicle. And then when you get this side done, you can work on the other side and use this as your reference. Or you can just take pictures and make sure you put it together all the correct way. Now, on these brake shoes, you have the actual part that the brake shoe is either riveted to, or they can be glued to as well. These basically have teeth that rest in here and hold them together, and then the bottom are just floating. You can actually move them. So all the springs are specifically for returning the brake shoes or operating another component such as the e-brake or the self-energizing portion of the brake. And then you have this key down here. I can't remember the exact name of it right now, but it separates the shoes here in the center but holds them together at the same time. You can see each side has a spring on it. Sorry, this is extremely filthy. We will be doing a drum brake job on these here soon because these are pretty bad. Won't be spending a whole lot of money on it because eventually I will be removing this rear end and going with a better rear end, because I'm sure this one's not going to last me long. But once again, to remove the actual drum from the drum brake system, just simply make sure your e-brake is off, your shoes aren't in contact with the drum, and simply hit it with a mallet. If it won't come off, make sure you don't have any clips here holding it on or anything like that. Beat it with a hammer. Maybe use some WD-40 around here if you really can't get it off, and a pry bar in between the backing plate and the drum. Just be very careful not to damage your backing plate, because you don't want to damage it, and then you won't have a good seal and you can get more contaminants and stuff inside of your drum. But once again, make sure to stay clear of the brake dust. It is very harmful and definitely not good for you. So that is basically it for a drum brake system. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I just tried to quickly go over this. Alrighty, YouTubers, so I hope you got a little bit of information out of there. I wasn't like super specific. You know, you got the main components, the brackets, the brake shoes, the drum, the return springs, specialty springs, hold down springs, the e-brake mechanism, and they all vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. It's very little changes, but some do just use different shapes on the brackets and wires and stuff like that. But if you have any questions whatsoever, please let me know. Also, it will be a more in-depth video when I actually do the drum brake install on this vehicle. So if you're thinking about doing drum brakes in the future, maybe I'll do mine before you get yours done, and hopefully it's helpful. But as far as a little bit of information on drum brakes, I hope this video was informative. Also, when installing your drums after you've done the brake job, basically that star wheel needs to be adjusted to where the shoes are just right before they make contact, or just very lightly making contact with that drum when you slide it on. So when you're sliding the drum on when you're done, you should feel a little bit of resistance, but you shouldn't have to really put effort into turning the drum once it's installed. So that's just a little tip, and if you do, you just simply adjust that star nut right there at the bottom. So that's it. But in order to take the drum off, it's really not that many tools. Obviously, the impact for your wheels, the pry bar and hammer if you need assistance in getting that drum off of the brake system, and then just some brake cleaner so you're not breathing in that brake dust. Then once you get into it, you can either use pliers and screwdrivers to get the job done, or if you want to make it a little bit easier on yourself, they do have drum brake toolkits. Check out one of my previous Tool Talk episodes where I go over the set that I have. That one makes the jobs extremely easy compared to using just pliers and screwdrivers. So I'll include that in the drum brake job in the future as well. So I really hope you guys enjoy. I'm done out here. I'm sweating profusely. So I'm gonna head in and relax, but I hope you guys are having a great week, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And once again, let me know what you guys think of this gift my wife got me for hitting 2,500 subs. I think it's absolutely amazing. So once again, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you.